Move now to H.2042, an act relative to child protection, and welcome a panel of Diane Dorrington, Susan Daniels, and Pamela Vidal for a 7-minute panel. Welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. Does this go to the room or just that?
You just speak up to
Okay,
pick
great.
up a little bit.
House 2042 seeks to remove the legal exemptions in mass law that allows obscene material to be available to minors in our schools and public libraries by striking out the last sentence in Chapter 272, Section 28. This is a bill by request with no legislative support, although we do have an additional 40 names added to the petition. So thank you very much for allowing us to present today. 7 years ago, I started to examine the sex education curriculum that is taught throughout Massachusetts, and to say that I was shocked would be an understatement. The sexually explicit materials I found went way beyond the necessary biological, medical, and reproductive education that is appropriate for school settings. When I shared information with others, the first thing they asked me every single time is, how is this legal? Because I didn't have an answer, I took a deep dive into our obscenity laws, and that's what brings us here today. From my best research, the final sentence in Chapter 272, Section 28, was added in 1974, and prior to that, there were no exemptions when it came to protecting minors from obscene and harmful materials. I imagine our legislators had a thoughtful discussion about adding the exemptions for schools, museums, and libraries, and for any employee thereof. But I don't think in 1974 they could have imagined the explicit material that our children have available to them in their schools and their libraries today. Would they have looked into the future and imagined a book written for children as young as 10 years old, which has 67 drawings of nude bodies, multiple sex acts, teens masturbating, and a man putting on a condom? Would they have been comfortable with a 12-year-old watching a cartoon of a teen boy in his bedroom masturbating while soft porn music plays in the background? Would they have thought that was an appropriate resource to show or to disseminate to a minor? Would they have had the forethought to know about the internet websites that would be given to minors in school as part of their education? The ones that suggest S&M behaviors and ask the students who they'd like to F? Would they have envisioned how-to tutorials for 9th graders that detail foreplay, rimming, oral sex, and anal sex? Would they have visualized a library book that contains explicit drawings of a woman's private area with suggestions on where to tap, blow, flutter, or tug? Or that also suggests that children, minors, research their porn stars so they can find out their own kink interests? I don't think in 1974 that any of these examples would have been included in the legislative body's debate, but sadly, this is what you're faced with today in 2025, and you cannot turn away. Almost weekly, we hear stories of angry parents confronting school boards because of sexually explicit content that's being provided to their children in school, which is the very place a parent or guardian should feel that their children are being shielded from such things. All in all, the communities you serve are suffering. The issue is pitting parents against teachers and neighbor against neighbor. Most important, these exemptions on our obscenity laws are hurting our children and stealing their innocence. Quite simply, these exemptions are contrary to the intent of the law, which is to protect our children from material that is already deemed legally harmful and described in Chapter 272, Section 31, which is to be applied when referencing Section 28. In closing, we feel our obscenity laws should be applied consistently in every circumstance, and the law should apply to everyone. Our hope is that 2042 moves successfully and favorably through this committee and onto the House floor where passionate and in-depth discussion can take place, and you're going to have to be brave. Our leaders must view Section 28 through the lens of 2025, not 1974.
My name is Susan Daniels, and thank you for your time today with the committee. I'm here to speak in favor of House Bill 2402. Dee Dee really went through the history of the issue, but the inclusion of pornographic material in our children's curriculum in school libraries is impacting the innocence of minors and goes well beyond sex education. In fact, many of these books available provide explicit instructions on how to conduct sexual activities. In my view, this is an intentional attempt to indoctrinate our children and with it destroy the family. The innocence of our young children and youth should be protected, and they should be focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic, not making books available to instruct them on how to conduct sexual behaviors at a very young age. It's important to note, this is not about book banning or an attack on the LGBTQ and transgender community, which has been the case when we presented this in our local community. This is about protecting the innocence of our children, good versus evil. This should not be a bipartisan discussion, as I don't believe any Democratic parent or Republican parent is aware of what is going on. I certainly wasn't until Dee Dee brought it to my attention. And this isn't just happening in Massachusetts, it's happening across the nation. Just last week in Connecticut, there was a legislative meeting like this today, and a House representative got up and spoke about the exact exemption that they're trying to insert into the bill. And she brought a book with her called Me and Earl and the Dying Girl and talked about the explicit language. The legislators shut it down because they couldn't stand the vile, disgusting language that is in the book, but they were complicit with it going into our children, like many of our legislators and that would not support this bill. So they felt it was inappropriate for the consumption, but they seem to be complicit. Again, this is simply wrong, and we all must unite together to stop this and protect our children.
Thank you. My name is Pam Vidal. And because of time, I'm going to go a little short. Matthew 18:22-6 says, Jesus called a little one to his side and said to them, learn this well. Unless you dramatically change your way of thinking and become teachable as a little child, you will never be able to enter in. Whoever certainly humbles himself to become like a little child is the greatest one in heaven's kingdom realm. And if you tenderly care for this little one on my behalf, you are tenderly caring for me. But if anyone abuses one of these little ones who denies in me, it would be better for him to have a heavy boulder around his neck and be hurled into the deepest sea than to face this punishment he deserves. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. We welcome follow-up written testimony as well if you care to submit any. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none at this time.